All right, guys, welcome back to the next episode of my NHL Deep Dive series. Today we're talking about the Nashville Predators, and I have a very special guest with me. People who've been following me for a long time might remember him from a certain podcast that I used to do. One of the podcasts I used to do. Uh, but we have Jeff Middleton here. He is a writer for still like 50 different places, and he's been a good friend for a number of years. So I'm very happy to have him here to talk about his hometown Nashville Predators. So Jeff, thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. No, it's good to be back with you doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's
Even
like
just
riding
for
a
just an
bike.
episode.
So yeah, this is going to kind of work the same way all our other videos have. If you guys have been following the series along on YouTube, and we're going to jump into the Predators off season, and this was one of the more entertaining off seasons this summer for sure. Um, Forward wise, they bring in Jonathan Marchessault and obviously Steven Stamkos. They lose Jason Zucker, Anthony Beauvillier, and Kiefer Sherwood. This group is easily upgraded for me going into this season. Obviously, you add a generational scorer like Steven Stamkos, and I feel like that's kind of been the thing that the Predators have been missing outside of their top line has been like a true sniper. And obviously, you go add one of the greatest scorers of all time. That's going to help you out. But I also really like the Jonathan Marchessault ad. Going into this summer, that was kind of I thought like the perfect player for the Predators in what they needed, kind of in that second line role. And loss wise, I mean, Jason Zucker was fine, but they really didn't lose a whole lot other than that. Anthony Villiers didn't really work out, I think, as much as people might have hoped. And Kiefer Sherwood is just kind of a decent depth move. But I'm curious to see kind of how you project these additions to help Nashville this year.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's pretty awesome because when we look at the entire history of the Nashville Predators, it's a lot of, being good, not great, or being mediocre, not good, kind of, in that area. And they've never really had a bona fide superstar other than Roman Yossi. I mean, especially in terms of forward, elite center talent has not really been the trademark of the Nashville Predators. You obviously have Philip Forsberg, who's 30 years old, but you know, he's doing his thing. He's scoring a lot of goals when he stays healthy. Yossi, like I just mentioned, on the back end, and obviously Pecorine is the big one there too. But as far as forward talent goes, Philip Forsberg is arguably the most talented Nashville Predator to ever play and for multiple seasons. Obviously, they've had guys. Paul Kariya is one of them. I mean, he was just fantastic. But in terms of tenure with the Preds, it wasn't as long. Same with a guy like Peter Forsberg, wore a Preds jersey but wasn't here for long. So Philip Forsberg's probably been the best forward that is tenured for the Nashville Predators. And even though Steven Stamkos likely falls into that category of Korea and Peter Forsberg, that kind of addition just increases the goal scoring ability, the Stanley Cup pedigree, the veteran presence. I mean, whatever other kind of categories you're looking for,
Yeah.
you get that with Steven Stamkos. Other than maybe the physicality, but you're not paying him to be physical.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jonathan Marchessault, even too. I mean, obviously he's not the same kind of level as Steven Stamkos, but I think that you're not paying him as much, 5.5 million compared to 8 million. But at the end of the day, I mean, Jonathan Marchessault is a Stanley Cup champion. Jonathan Marchessault, he's scored 40 plus goals. I mean, he's got that kind of scoring touch in him. And when you look at last season, I think this is where the biggest addition is going to come in, or the biggest helping hand is going to come in, I should say, is like these guys, Gustav Nyquist, for example, he scored over 70 points last year.
Yeah.
That is not going to happen. I hate to say it, I do, because Gustav Nyquist last year he was really fun to watch, but he's
Yeah.
35 years old. He was a bargain for his contract last year, but I mean, just frankly speaking, he's not going to be scoring as much as he was last year just due to regression and all that fun
Yeah.
statistical analyst stuff. Um, and you need guys to compete at the highest level, and not even the highest level is the NHL, but the highest of the highest level, and that's Steven Stamkos, that's Jonathan Marchessault, so that's Ryan O'Reilly, even at his age. Like those guys have all been keys, and adding that kind of insurance, that goal scoring insurance with Philip Forsberg really, really just kind of ups the ante when it comes to what the Predators are looking to do in the postseason and obviously the regular season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the rest of Nashville's offseason, I don't think was as exciting as those moves. Obviously, we had the Yaroslav Askarov trade that happened, which we can touch on in a second.
Yeah.
But defensively, they bring in Brady Shea, who has kind of grown on me a little bit, especially since his time in Carolina. I wasn't a huge fan of him with the Rangers, but he's kind of come around with me. They lose Ryan McDonough, obviously, as part of the cap um, moves to clear up the space for somebody like Stamkos. Tyson Barrie also walks, and he just kind of didn't find the resurgence they probably wanted him to. And then in net, they bring in Scott Wedgwood as a backup. They lose Kevin Lankinen and obviously Askarov in the trade with San Jose. I'm curious to see how you feel about Brady Shea fitting into this blue line because I feel like he's kind of the player that nobody's really talking about with this Predators offseason. And I think he could add a pretty significant boost to a unit that is probably the weakest on the team in the back end.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that he's not getting talked about as much as he probably should be because he's getting paid $7 million for a
Yeah.
very long time, 7 years. But I mean, it's interesting because he might be the player to watch next season. Obviously, you have the big names in Stamkos and Marchand, so but Brady Shea's getting paid a lot of money, and he's moving out of a system that is very, very good defensively in
Yeah.
Carolina, and it'll be interesting to see how he kind of adjusts to what Andrew Brunette wants in Nashville, and that's, I mean, it's the same kind of philosophy I think as Rod Brind'Amour in Carolina. A lot of
Yeah.
shots, a lot of scoring opportunities, high expected goals, that kind of idea. But I think the defense it kind of takes the back seat for Andrew Brunette, whereas I think Rod Brind'Amour his entire system really stems from his defense. You don't see nearly as many guys scoring as much as they probably should be. I mean, a lot of people give Sebastian Aho not crap, but a little bit of flack for, everybody calls him elite offensively, but he doesn't score like it. And I think that has to do a lot with, Rod Brind'Amour's system. And obviously, I think Sebastian Aho is a phenomenal player. I don't want anybody to take that kind of out of context, but um, I think it'll be interesting to see how Shea, coming off a really good offensive season as well,
Yeah.
kind of adjusts defensively in an Andrew Burnett system that I think is a little bit more flexible in the defensive end. That entire unit is really interesting to me because obviously Roman Yossi is going to be good. I don't have any doubt about that. 34, but he's just phenomenal. Alex Carrier, they need him to be, they need him to be good this year. They need him to be a strong number three defenseman. Because frankly, right now it's Roman Yossi, Brady Shea, and kind of everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Carrier, Luke Shen, who is going to be what he's going to be. I mean, my feelings toward Luke Shen have been well broadcasted out there. Dante Fabro, he's 1 year deal, trying to prove himself, but he's just going to be. I think his ceiling's around 5 or 6 defensemen, and then you have Jeremy Lauzon and Spencer Stastny hoping to come in and
Yeah.
really make an impact. So, you'll see these guys try and take a step forward, and that's what the Preds need. They need Roman Yossi and Brady Shea to be that foundation, and then they need these younger guys, Alex Carrier and Dante Fabro, especially, and Spencer Stastny as well. Spencer Stastny, I think, is going to be a really strong presence on the back end. Mark Del Gaizo might make the team. It just kind of depends. Tanner Mollendijk, he's likely not going to make the team, but he'll be interesting to see as the season moves forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those three guys are really going to be key cogs in the Predators' kind of uh, chase for the top three in the Central Division and a long postseason run because I mean they're mostly unproven outside of one pretty strong season next to Roman Yossi for Alex Carrier. He hasn't really proven anything yet. Last year he was okay, not great, not really good. He was just kind of fine. Fabro is really good defensively, and despite what National Predators fans will tell you, I'm of the opinion that he is a very good defenseman. Not to say that he's, going to be like a world beater or anything like that, but he's going to be a solid 5 to 6 defenseman. He can step up in a role next to Roman Yossi and be support if he needs to be. Um, but I think with two guys in Luke Shen and Jeremy Lauzon, you have the physicality. They're gonna, Jeremy Lauzon set a single season hits record last year. Like they're gonna beat the crap out of people, and
Yeah.
that's what it's gonna be. They're not expecting them to score a bunch or anything like that. That's why you need those other four to mix and match well with Yossi and Shea.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all that. I think, especially in like based on the structure of the Predators blue line, it's gonna be interesting to see how they run Lazon and Shen,
Hmm.
because I feel like those are kind of the two biggest question marks on this blue line. Although I don't think there's a ton of like top end talent outside of Yossi on this blue line. It,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of guys who can fill roles pretty well, and I feel like those two are kind of the two biggest liabilities might not be the right word. Well, maybe for like Jeremy Lazon, but like Luke Shen, I think is a fine like number 6 defenseman in a strong system. Um, and he's shown flashes. I mean, he looked fine in with the Leafs for his brief stint there, and I worry about how they're going to protect these players with all the other question marks, right? Because I mean, Dante Fabro, I think people are still waiting for him to kind of take that next step. Stastny is obviously like I liked him last year, but I need to see him to take on a bigger role as well. And obviously you have Carrier, who, like you said, had a really strong season playing with Roman Yossi, but is he a product of that pairing, or is he actually going to be able to kind of elevate somebody else that
Yeah.
he's playing with? So it seems like this is kind of the group where if Nashville is going to be looking to improve at some point during the season, the blue line seems like the biggest area of need, I guess. Um, but then you also have, UC Saros in net, who we haven't talked about yet. And, I think he's one of the 4 best goalies in the NHL. I've been the UC Saros truther for basically his whole career, and I know you have as well.
So yeah, you
Um,
me both.
yeah, so like he's one of the players. I think I ended up counting. I had 16 players get an A+ rating, and Roman Yossi is one of them, and UC Saros is another. And Saros is I don't know if you want to say he had a down year last year, but I still think that he's one of the 3 or 4 best goalies in the NHL, and it'll be interesting to see how they run that with Scott Wedgwood behind him, who I think is a pretty not significant downgrade, but is a downgrade in what he would have had as a backup in either Lankinen or Askarov. And I guess like is he somebody who you're kind of worried about might get the Connor Hellebuck treatment, where he has to play a strong number of games during the regular season, and that might kill him come playoff time.
I mean, I don't think so. I think that I mean, he's played over 60 games in the last 3 seasons, I believe. So
Yeah,
I think that he's been able to handle the workload pretty well. I think that it's 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 hard to tell right now because I mean we've talked about this since we met. It was goalies are just they're unpredictable, man. Like it's
oh yeah,
impossible to figure out what they're gonna do in on a season to season basis. And I think that while UC Saros is unbelievably talented, he's I mean his resume speaks for itself. I mean the last 3 years, the last 3 4 years I should say have been phenomenal. Uh, you know he's been in the top 5 of the Vezina Trophy voting multiple times. Was a finalist. That's just I mean he's an excellent goaltender, and that's why he got the contract extension that he did. But I also think the contract extension is a little worrying, and I have since they signed it, and I've had an issue with that kind of debacle, I should say, between Saros and Askarov. Where should Askarov play this year? All that
yeah,
stuff, and obviously that was decided when they signed Saros that he wasn't going to get the starting job for a long time. And that's one thing you want to go with what you know. And Barry Trotz didn't draft Yaroslav Askarov, and I understand that you don't, if you don't know a player as well as he doesn't have a vested interest in keeping that guy around and making sure that it's a good pick. Like his predecessor drafted him 11th overall. It's not his to worry about. And that doesn't mean that Askarov isn't extremely talented. I think he is. And I think Barry Trotz thinks he is, but I think it's just a different kind of situation. Whereas, say, Poyle was in the driver's seat and he has been in the driver's seat, and then there's an empty backup spot. You re-sign Saros, but there's an empty backup spot. Do you think David Poyle brings in Scott Wedgwood, or do you think he brings Yaroslav Askarov up? I think he goes with Askarov just
Yeah.
because, he does have some things to work on. But I think as far as my opinion goes, I think that he's proven everything he needs to prove at the AHL level. I don't think that there's anything he can really, improve further other than, he's getting kind of the Dustin Wolf treatment right now.
Yeah.
Um, whereas now in San Jose, he's going to be, in contention for a starting role, if not the backup role. So he's going to get NHL time. But I think I think Saros is the most important piece of the puzzle, as he has been the last few years. They wouldn't be where they are today without him. You could say that about multiple seasons in this last
Yeah.
kind of half decade that he's been the starter. Um, but yeah, I think extending a 29-year-old going on 30-year-old goaltender for 8 years is a little troublesome. I understand why he did it. I understand the logic behind Trotz's decision. But I think that you really, really need to hope that Saros is uh, consistent in his performances, that the voodoo whatever doesn't hit him like it has other goaltenders. Or at the very least, it might hit him a little bit, but you still make the playoffs, and he does a Sergei Bobrovsky where he, is in contention for the Conn Smythe. Like that, I think every Preds fan would be happy with that. But as far as that goes, I do think that Saros is one of the most important players to watch on this team, if not the most important, as he has been in these last few seasons. And I think that he's undeniably talented. I think you're right, and top four goaltender in the league. And now it's just about kind of keeping that consistency, making sure that this contract doesn't look like a bad investment in the next coming years, and especially this season. Especially, I mean, this is his last year on the five
Yeah.
million dollar contract that he signed that he had beforehand. So yeah, I mean he's just gonna be UC Staros. He's gonna win the Predators games. I think last year was a fluke, honestly. If I'm speaking honestly, I think he wasn't nearly as good as he was projected to be, not nearly as good as he wanted to be, not nearly as good as people expected him to be. I think that changes this year.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that as well. I think Saros is I think last year was more of an anomaly than the real piece of the puzzle. And I mean, the Predators should also be able to score a lot more this season. At least you hope
Yeah,
so with
that did not
Marchand and
help either.
Stamkos.
Yeah.
So that should help them win games, even if he doesn't get back to the full like top 2, 3 goalie in the NHL. Uh, some kind of regression back to the mean alongside the offensive production they brought in should help. I guess the last thing I kind of want to touch on, and you talked about it a bit with the contracts, and I think that's kind of the biggest long term concern for me is just how much money this team, both David Poyle before and Barry Trotz now, have kind of thrown at aging players. But one of the things that they've done extremely well is manage their prospect pool, and we just had ranks on for the
Yeah.
Bruins series, and I gushed about his prospect rankings and everything, and he has Nashville at
Same.
8 right now
Yeah.
in his prospect pool, and there's a lot of guys in that pool that I think could get opportunities as soon as this season, especially on a bottom six, forward wise that I think has some opportunities to break into. I guess quickly, like, is there anybody that you've kind of got your eye on that could be uh, that could kind of make their NHL career start this season?
Yeah, I think Zach LaRue is the big one for
Yeah.
the forwards. I mean, he's just a bowling ball, man. Like he fits into literally every role that you could want him to fit into. He can play bottom six. He can be a checking forward. He can be a skilled checking forward. He could play in the middle six. He could play in the top six if you need him to. Obviously, the biggest concern is his how do I say this? His over his antsiness to get into fights and to create chaos, I think is the best way to put that. He loves to stir the pot, and he's not afraid to do it multiple times, and that has resulted in some people questioning his character and how he plays and all that stuff. And I think that they're fair criticisms of him. I think he's got to rein it in if he wants to play consistently at the highest level, but you can't deny his skill. He's been a productive forward at the AHL level, and he's been what Carl Taylor needs as far as being skilled, uh, being controversial when somebody gets hurt, standing up for teammates. Like he's not afraid to be a little flashy, not afraid to be go back to the 80s and grind out a shift and just hit everybody in sight. That's a really good player to have kind of locked and loaded if some injuries happen.
Yeah.
I think defensively, I already mentioned him. Mark Del Gaizo looks like he could get a chance to make the roster. Him, Spencer Stasny have kind of been the back and forth for the Preds kind of prospect pool on defense. They're a little weaker there. I mean, they have Ryan Ufko, who I think he still needs another year. Tanner Mollendijk probably still needs another year unless he really, really shows out. But they have those four guys that are, solid. They're different kinds of players, which I think is really good. But yeah, I think Mark Del Gaizo on the back end is going to be someone that they look at. Mollendijk, there was rumors about him making the team, but I doubt that happens. And yeah, I think the other names, Joachim Kemmel, I think still needs another year. He came in, lit it up when he first got into the AHL, and then last year was a bit of a down year. I think he's still kind of adjusting, needs to work on physicality and some other kind of round out his parts of his game. And then I'm blanking on the last one, but yeah, no, I think Kemmel and those kind of it was Fedor Svechkov. I think
Yeah.
that he's a guy who, first round pick. You're kind of looking at him to kind of take a step next year. He was fine last year. I thought he was good. He had some solid production, but he's not going to be the guy that he could fill a bottom six role if necessary. But I don't think that they're ready for that yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was it's great insight there. Appreciate you coming on and talking with us for a bit about the Preds. And I guess I'll give you this time to just plug whatever you've been working on and where people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, I mean, I'm just you know me. I'm around, right? I mean, I got
This might take 10
it's
minutes for the new
I was
people.
saying,
So.
yeah, I got so much going on all the time, man. I'm writing for Flames Nation at the Nation Network, covering Calgary. I still do a little bit of work over it on the forecheck, writing about the Preds, whenever that kind of comes available in my schedule. I'm the assistant sports editor at the student newspaper here at Miami, focus on the Miami hockey team and college hockey and that kind of stuff, especially now. Do some
Yeah.
baseball in the spring and all that stuff. And then, baseball, soccer, all that kind of good stuff. I do that as well. It's all out there. So yeah, you can check me out on Twitter at JJMid04. It's where I post all my articles, post all my takes, and you'll hear about the Preds, I'm sure, at some point if you follow me over there. So yeah.
Yeah, it should be an exciting season. Nashville is one of the teams I'm most excited to watch this year. So hopefully it works out for them. I've been to 2 games in Nashville. It was an awesome experience. I recommend it
Yeah.
to everybody who if you have a chance to go. But yeah, thank you again for coming on, and for everybody watching, make sure you like and subscribe. We got 12 more episodes to go before the start of the season, so I'm gonna be pumping them out pretty pretty consistently from here on out. Yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.